Welcome to the Mixology Talk podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind abarabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar operators, and other people who like to drink.
We like to drink.
I like to drink.
You like to drink. This is good company. Funny you should ask. So I'm drinking a rum old fashioned. It's really delicious.
Hard to go wrong.
Very simple, straightforward, and just like me. And what are you drinking?
I am drinking what I like to call a FOMOSA. It is sparkling water, orange juice, and then today, just for a little pizzazz, I added some grenadine. So that's why it's so pretty.
Ooh, pretty. So anyways, back on track here. So I'm a bar consultant with over 15 years of hospitality experience now.
15 years.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Weird.
And I run abarabove.com where we have an awesome Instagram account where we share all kinds of cool stuff that we're learning. We write awesome articles about bar techniques, about growing your career behind the bar, and all that good stuff.
Now, a quick pro tip sponsored by BevSpot. Mixology is always my favorite part of working behind the bar, and inventory, not so much. But it doesn't have to be painful. Make the process much faster by setting up your inventory spreadsheet in the same order that you're going to be doing inventory. And if you can, put on your favorite upbeat music. I'll admit it, my favorite inventory music was Van Halen back in the day. I know. Dated. If you're just getting started though, and you're just learning about this inventory process, then you might like BevSpot's free bar inventory spreadsheet. It's a simple template that will get you started very quickly, so you don't have to go and recreate your own spreadsheet from scratch. Find it over at bevspot.com/inventory spreadsheet.
This is episode number 132, and over the last year, we've had the opportunity to go to some pretty cool cocktail conferences. In October, we went to the Bar Institute Portland, which I think is now called the Portland Cocktail Week, as it used to be called many years ago. And we also went to several others. San Antonio,
Las Vegas.
Nightclub and Bar Show. And then just a few short weeks ago, Chris went to Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans. I didn't get to go. Hashtag FOMO. It was hard to see all the awesome pictures, but I know that he had an awesome time. And we thought that we would take a minute to circle back on these events and talk about some of the cool bleeding edge mixology techniques that we've been seeing. Because not everybody has the ability to be doing this crazy mixology stuff at their bars, but there's some really interesting stuff going on. So we thought we would just give you a quick overview of what we've seen.
So over the last year, I had the good fortune of attending two great seminars discussing the bleeding edge of mixology. In this episode, I thought it would be fun to share some of those ideas that really caught my eye on those seminars. But before I do, I want to give credit to the people who actually put those seminars on. The first one was with Justin Cardwell. He did a great job in Portland Cocktail Week with a seminar called Blinding Me with Science.
Love the name.
Yeah, and it was really great because it really focused on many different things, many different elements and pieces of technology that we can incorporate in the bar program.
And that one, I think the whole video is up on the Portland Cocktail Week Facebook page.
It is, yeah, and that is an amazing resource. I know they don't have a ton of views, but if you go to their Facebook page and go under videos, all of the big ones are on there, and they're just a wealth of knowledge.
Or you can just go to the show notes, mixologytalk.com/132. I'm going to include a link there too.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Highly recommended. So the second seminar was just a few weeks ago at Tales of the Cocktail. It was a seminar called The Future of Drink, and it definitely lived up to its name. And that was presented by two gentlemen. I'm going to have to read it here real quick because they're Catalan? How do you... They were from Spain. Catalonian.
With the accents. We need to find a way to avoid accents.
No, let's do the accents.
No.
But their names were Matthias Sarli and Ignacio de Juan Croy, I want to say. Cray.
I apologize for the mispronunciation that definitely just occurred.
Yeah, but they own a company called 8020ML in Spain. And it's kind of this really cool incubator think tank bringing cutting-edge techniques from pastry and really high-level cuisine into the mixology world, and they spread that information through education and consulting.
Mm-hmm. So one of the first things that we were going to go over is kind of like a new technique, or I should say a new take on an old technique.
Right.
old. I wouldn't say old, old-ish.
Yeah, I mean,
years old.
things move so fast in the mixology space that, you know, things that were novel and new, it just progresses so quickly. Like barrel aging, that was like cutting edge a couple years ago. Yeah. And I was like, nah.
It's like spreading edge.
Yeah.
It's no longer like cutting.
The dull edge of a knife on a butter on toast.
So this concept is the idea of sous vide, but specifically sous vide for the purpose of preservation. And I thought this was really interesting. This is from Justin Cardwell's presentation. I think sous vide as a concept is
very old,
decently well established.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit leading edge, no longer bleeding edge, spreading.
Yeah.
But the idea of using it for preservation is really interesting, especially behind the bar. One of the things that Chris was telling me about was the idea of using sous vide as a way to make an aged milk punch. And I think the challenge you're running into with an aged milk punch is the problem of the milk going bad, right?
Right, absolutely. So most barrel age programs are at room temperature. So, you know, leaving milk at room temperature for weeks at a time, it just sounds like a terrible idea.
Cheese.
Right, exactly. Oh, it's so nutty.
Oh, no.
But there's obviously complications with that, and we're not even talking about health risk here. We're just talking about production. You just can't produce it. So he came up with a lot of novel ideas as far as sous vide goes. And for anybody that doesn't know what sous vide is basically putting something in a vacuum pressure bag and then cooking it in a water bath at a very specific temperature. So this allows you to do really cool stuff. Like they use it a lot in food for like cooking eggs perfectly. For like a runny yolk, but the whites are fully cooked, and steaks at the perfect medium rare temperature.
It's a very precise way of cooking.
Absolutely.
But in this application, it's used as a way to
essentially pasteurize.
Exactly.
Right,
so
exactly.
You put the milk, tell me if I'm wrong, you put the milk into a vacuum sealed bag with a barrel stave, like a piece of a barrel, close it up, so no air in there, just get it completely airtight, and then put it in that sous vide water bath and heat it to a high enough temperature that it's going to kill all the bad guys in there.
Right.
And then you've kind of created something that's not going to go bad because there's nothing alive left in it.
Right. So then you bring it out of the bath, you know, a couple hours after it reaches temperature, and just kind of cool it down. I'm sure you can probably just leave it in the refrigerator. That'll probably help it kind of the longevity of it, but essentially it's a fully sealed system, and there shouldn't be anything alive in there.
The only challenge I see with that is it's going to be really hard to taste.
Yeah, that's going to be hard. You know, you don't have the Capri Sun like straws in there that's going to open it up too.
You could do that.
That would be amazing. Barrel aged milk punch, Capri Sun style. That's awesome.
Oh, we need to do Capri Sun cocktails.
But yeah, it's a really cool idea, really novel approach. Like sous vide, at the high-end restaurants that I've worked in the past, we had multiple ones, and the challenge for us was not the technology, it was getting in on the space, because we only had like 4 or 5 of them.
Wow.
So it was just like, you know, y'all constantly, the kitchen would be using them. So
what this lets you do is it lets you infuse the sort of barrel flavor into the milk without making cheese.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not the only application.
No.
There's a lot of other things that you can use this sort of pasteurization for. Kind of a simple yet something I hadn't heard of way to do it is just pasteurizing your own juice.
Yeah, and he brought up, so his whole angle on this whole seminar was using it in a practical business sense. So making technology work for me from a financial standpoint, which is a really cool idea, because a lot of the time we don't talk about the financial side of these craft cocktails. You know, it's all about the passion, about the love and the customer experience, but it's a business at the end of the day. And this is where he kind of brought this seminar from, was the business and production side of things.
Yeah, usually mixology and bleeding edge don't find their way to the spreadsheet.
Right, exactly. So, you know, I think he's a bar owner, and that's kind of the process, or the mindset that he came from. And what he advocated for and what he recommended was you could do most of your production in one day for juicing for essentially an entire month.
That's so crazy.
Which is crazy, right? So you batch out gallons and gallons and gallons.
It like goes against the core of my being.
Kind of, but you know, the point that he was making was really good. It's like, yeah, sure, you can do a la minute and press everything to order and have this ridiculous cocktail, or, you know, even do per day. But at the end of the day, you know, where are you going to draw the line?
Yeah.
You know, you're spending a lot more on labor if you're juicing every single day. So he recommended doing this once a month. Essentially doing a sous vide bath of a low temperature, not all the way up to a high temperature for normal pasteurization, but, you know, I think you recommended like 110 degrees or something like that, and for a couple hours, and then literally just freezing it. And then you can pull out the juice bags whenever you need them, put them in a water bath real quick just to get them up to room temperature, and that's your juice for the day.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And, you know, you could start running numbers and knowing how much lime juice you go in a shift and start to really proportion your bags out. I mean, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. What I wonder with that is two things. First of all, I mean, the idea of cooking citrus juice, it like hurts. It, like,
a little bit.
It feels so wrong.
Well, and he kind of owns it too.
Yeah.
In a seminar. I highly recommend you watching it. But you know, since you're cooking at a much lower temperature, you're not breaking down all the enzymes and, you know, all the things that's going to really harm the juice. So it's still kind of a fresh-ish juice, but not fully pasteurized like you would get.
Asterisk.
It's much better than pasteurized juice you get from a supermarket.
For which
example.
is certainly not a month old. It's much older than that.
Exactly. So.
But what I would wonder is, could you just freeze it? Do you need, I mean, arguably freezing it would probably stop it from going bad too, especially if you're only talking about a month.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
Would be fun. Maybe we should experiment.
Maybe we should. If you do know the answer to that, if you saw the session or if you watched the session and know the answer, I would be curious to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead and leave it in the comments at mixologytalk.com/132.
So
I still think it's a great idea.
I do too.
Don't get me wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about. So at least with regard to this method, I did not have the opportunity to join that seminar. So I don't want to poo-poo on his methods, but I would be very curious to know what the benefit is of that heating step and really the benefit and the cost that comes with it as far as the flavor goes.
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if anybody knows, please let us know.
Yeah. And I think piggybacking on that is the ability to, I think you were telling me that Justin gave an example of somebody who was competing in a cocktail competition. They were from Texas, I think. And they were using a Texas ruby red grapefruit in their cocktail.
Right.
Problem is that Texas ruby red grapefruit is from Texas, and the competition was in France or something
or some other country. Yeah.
So what he did is he followed this same method, and he went ahead and he juiced his grapefruits. He did the water bath. He froze them and then shipped them to France, and he was able to compete with a fresh
hyper-local
ingredient, which I think is a really cool concept. And that's something where you just don't have the opportunity to do anything else. Right,
and he really owns kind of the strengths and the weaknesses of this program, and using this in any kind of commercial setting. One of the things that he mentioned was the fact that, yeah, you could do this for your own bar. You're never going to be able to sell this. Like, that's just, it doesn't meet the requirements to be commercially sold.
Sure.
But you can keep it in your own place and sell it.
So it's safe to serve.
Right,
but it's not going to meet, like, FDA labeling requirements.
You're not going to see it in Albertsons, is basically what he's saying.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, if you're going to buy an Albertsons, go get the other pastures.
Right, exactly.
And I will say one thing. If you're going to try this method, I can't speak to whether or not you will be able to get your frozen bags of ruby red grapefruit through customs.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of considerations, but it was really interesting to see kind of where he came from, you know, in bringing all this technology and how to implement it in a different way than we've seen or we may be accustomed to in our own one single restaurant or bar. So it was really cool to see his insights and some of the perspective that he has.
Yeah, definitely.
So another part of the seminar that he really focused on, once again, was kind of an old technique, but he kind of brought some new perspective on it. And that was concerning alternative acids like citric acid, malic acid, ascorbic acid, absorbic acid. And once again, it's more of a preservative than anything. It was a really cool insight into it. One of the things that he mentioned is just essentially completely replace all of your juice and have a shelf-stable cocktail. So imagine a mojito or a daiquiri that's completely shelf-stable that you could literally just open it up, pour it over ice a month later, and it's pretty stinking good. So
yeah, I mean, you are going to lose, you do lose a lot in that process, I think. Lime juice is not just citric
just
acid.
acids, right?
There's certainly flavor that comes with. There's certainly aroma that comes with.
And how he would use it actually in combination with the oils. So he would actually create like a liquid or a syrup or something like that with these acids, and then cook it or sous vide it with the peels to extract some of the oils and stuff like that.
So kind of like an oleosaccharum?
Kind of like an oleosaccharum.
Without the sugar.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, he would add all that nuance through the peels to recreate essentially a fresh lime or lemon juice. And it was interesting. And he kind of mentioned, he's like, look, it's not going to be as good as the real thing. It's going to be pretty stinking good, though.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And the one thing that I didn't think about, or that I didn't really consider, is using this as a replacement for clarified lime juice in keg programs.
I know this is a huge problem that you run into in a kegged cocktail program, is because I
all the pulp and stuff in there.
Yeah, my understanding, this is science, so I should really not venture into this area, but my understanding is that when you have the pulp from juice, for non-clarified juice, it just creates a place for the bubbles to reside. A nucleation site is what it's called. And the result is just like crazy fizzy cocktails.
Right, absolutely. So if anybody's done like the K-cocktails or the small one that we did in a video, I think we made...
like a bottled cocktail?
Yeah, the bottled carbonator. Small... not, the Izzy, definitely. It'll fizz up in Izzy as well. But we also did a video a couple of years ago, I want to say, Morgenthaler's little carbonating machine, the home-built carbonating machine.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, so this will... exact same scenario. You know, it's going to fizz up, it's going to get crazy. But if you use clarified, it's going to go down a lot.
So basically, if you're carbonating, you're going to run into this problem if you don't clarify.
Right, absolutely.
So don't carbonate without clarifying.
Right,
I feel
absolutely.
like it's a t-shirt. It's totally a t-shirt.
And then he just used acids, concentrated acids as a replacement almost completely, which is kind of a cool concept.
Well, also, I think it really depends what cocktail you're doing as well. If there's a cocktail that you're making that relies really heavily on that citrus flavor, you're going to run the risk of this cocktail not being as good by using this method. If it's a cocktail that uses just ever so slight amount of citrus, you can probably get away with a lot of this.
Right, absolutely.
So, I mean, plan accordingly.
Yeah, and one of the other things you could do is just acidify juices that aren't typically as acidic as a lemon or lime.
That's true.
For example, grape juice. You could add a bunch of citric acid to it and malic acid, whatever acid you feel like. Kind of round it out, give it some really nice acid, so that it's kind of the same profile as a lime or a lemon as far as the acidifying power of it. So this opens up a whole different flavor profiles that you could be working with that we never had before until we started to work with these kinds of acids. So it's really interesting and really novel approaches to cocktails now. It's
definitely something that I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, the idea of sort of tweaking the acidity of your ingredients. I think the interesting thing about your citric acid and these, I mean, I know citric acid for sure is, you typically buy it as a powder. So what's really neat about that is that you can alter, you know, if you have a cocktail that you're tasting, it's like, this is too sweet, but it's so close. Something like citric acid gives you the opportunity to change the acidity and change the acidity without changing the amount of water or the flavor.
Right.
You're not adding a lime flavor. You're not adding any additional water to the cocktail. So it's really sort of like changing one tiny element at a time. And again, this is not a new concept.
Been doing this for years.
For years, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
This is from even Darcy O'Neill's book, Fix the Pumps, where he talks about soda fountains. I mean, this is where it really started to kind of take its own life cycle and, you know, became very popular by using these kind of acids to create these fun flavors. And, and I mean, we use it in production. I don't use it, but companies use it in production for everything. If you ever had a Sour Patch Kid, that tart kind of puckeriness, that's from citric acid.
If you read the back of your juice bottle, like if you bought juice in the grocery store, chances are pretty good, no matter what juice it is, it's probably got citric acid in it.
Absolutely.
So this is not a new concept, but I think what I really like was his idea of using it as a method of preservation and using it specifically in the context of keg cocktails and carbonation. I think that's really smart. So the third thing that really stuck out to us was something that I personally think Justin made up the name for.
Probably.
I didn't Google it though, so who knows? And that is sonication. Does that not sound? That sounds super made up.
Sonication, sonification, Sonic the Hedgehog vacation.
Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh, we're dating
But it
ourselves.
sounds good.
It sounds good. It sounds really fancy, right?
Yeah.
So the concept here is to use a sound machine to rapidly infuse syrups and assist with emulsification.
Yep.
So basically, so what's a sound machine? Well, I mean, in the mixology sense, in the high-end, gastronomy sense, it's like a $3,000 machine that you have. I don't know what
it's like a rod, basically. That,
it just creates sound waves that result in it's kind of stirring in a way.
Yeah,
at a molecular level.
Yeah, like super fast vibration. So what it does, he explained this whole process and basically called it cavitation. So these bubbles would form and kind of collapse on themselves, and it's like a really violent process. But what happens with this is fats get stripped away, oils get stripped away, and kind of get really infused into a liquid. He said that the start of this whole thing was I'm sure a couple of people probably heard about it, was the rapid barrel aging that's happening. I think one of the guys down in Monterey recently kind of came up with this technology of creating a 4-year-old whiskey in like 3 weeks using this kind of technology, which is really interesting and fascinating.
Is really fascinating, and I think that the applications in a bar setting are enormous. I mean, how often are we infusing? How often are we, emulsifying? And especially if you're making any of your own ingredients, I think this is going to be great. And the other good news for you is that you don't have to spend $3,000.
Yeah, and so he kind of approached it from, okay, cool, this is what the technology looks like, this is what the machines look like, how can I make this affordable for the bar?
So you just get a jar and you just stir really fast.
Right.
No, that's not how you do it.
No, what he did was actually quite genius, and it was an ultrasonic cleaner from Harbor Freight.
So like what you use to clean your jewelry.
Jewelry and tools and like car parts and stuff with.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is you can clean a whole bunch of stuff at the same time.
I know. Yeah. Seriously.
Not really. Please wash it. Wash it.
But I've never messed with this. I'm dying to get my hands on one. I think your father has one.
My dad does have a jewelry cleaner.
There we go.
And there we go.
There's a video happening in the future. It's using physics and chemistry and science stuff. I mean,
Sonication.
Right.
Hashtag.
I know.
Sonication.
But
does anybody do that?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
No.
I'm so cool.
But I mean, it's basic science. So just waves of sound moving and vibrating molecules and creating energy.
When you talk about infusions, there's a couple things that make an infusion go faster. Surface area, increasing the surface area of the thing you're infusing, increasing the temperature, and the reason that works is because when you increase the temperature, it increases the movement of the molecules, and stirring.
And pressure.
And pressure. Thank you. There's a fourth one. Yeah. And pressure. And I think what this is kind of in the stirring and heat category, in that you're essentially stirring at a very molecular level, I suppose, and you're stirring the whole thing at once because those sound waves permeate through the entire mixture. So the result of this is quick infusions, thorough infusions, and to your point around emulsification, things like falernum, orgeat, things that require mixing of water and oils. Those are really notoriously difficult to do. This is a perfect example where you can really make that happen
I want to make a sonification, Sonic the Hedgehog vinaigrette.
Hey, that sounds good.
How cool, yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like we're borrowing my dad's jewelry cleaner.
But yeah, so this has a lot of applications for the mixology world. You covered a bunch of them.
It definitely could.
Some of the other ones that he talked about was rapid barrel aging. So if you're doing a barrel age program, once again, put it in a sous vide bag, throw your booze in there, throw the stave in there, throw it in a sonification, Sonic the Hedgehog machine, and
could you sous vide in a sonication machine?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't have.
Get crazy up in here.
Yeah, I don't know. Or it could be. I don't know if it's a closed system, if it's open system. I don't know. I don't know.
We do have a sous vide.
We do.
Machine thing.
That I haven't even used yet.
And
we have a jewelry cleaner.
We're gonna have a jewelry cleaner.
Oh my god, this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
So excited.
If you hear about an explosion in Northern California.
A vinaigrette explosion. That's what happened. Sorry. Yeah. Italian balsamic dressing just everywhere. But yeah, he mentioned even bitters like oleosaccharum. I know Morgenthaler came up with that method of the sous vide bag, and that helps out, a couple hours, and you have a really beautiful oleosaccharum. With this, he said 30 minutes.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're talking about super rapid infusion.
Yeah.
Bitters, he said.
Which could be dangerous, too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Some things infuse quickly, and some things should not be over-infused.
Right.
Specifically, I would immediately say teas and peppers. Those are always at risk of over-infusion.
Right.
Any sort of pepper is a really quick infusion.
And, I mean, if we're talking about dangerous ingredients like bittering agents.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it. I don't know if there's an authority out there. Hopefully Camper will get his database up and running for all those bartenders.
I think Camper English is putting together a resource on this. I will try to include a link in the show notes. I'm not sure if it's live yet.
Yeah, it's
if
probably
it
going
is,
to take a
I'll
while.
include it.
Yeah, but basically just be careful of harmful ingredients. All it takes is one bar messing up once and to get national coverage, and it's kind of game over for all of us, right?
Pretty much. Plus, somebody could get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other side effect is we don't want to
We
do any
also
harm.
care about people.
Right, exactly. So before you mess with that, do simple stuff. Falernum's cool. That's awesome.
Strawberries.
Strawberries!
Great idea.
Love me some strawberries.
Go to town.
But yeah, really another fascinating piece of technology that he implements at his bar that he worked at.
And something I think a lot of us could give a try.
For $60, I'm gonna. So the final seminar we're going to talk about was the one from Tales of the Cocktail called Future of the Drink. And like I said in the intro, it definitely lived up to that expectation. I was kind of going into this room thinking it's going to be the same exact seminar that we just talked about with Justin Cardwell, but it really wasn't. It was a whole nother level. It was a really cool, really specific style of mixology, very forward thinking.
I think what I liked about this one is, while Justin's seminar was very practical, like how do we take advanced mixology techniques and put them in a bar setting?
Right.
This one just completely throws that to the wind and says, forget the bar setting. Like, what can we do?
Right.
Like, what is the absolute coolest thing that we can do?
Yeah.
And I think that it just throws open the doors, right? There's no limitation on like how long your lime juice is good. Like, forget that. We're not worrying about that. We're not talking about cost. We're not talking about any of these sort of limitations. Like, what can we do?
Right. It was a no holds barred, like ultimate cocktail, just extravaganza. I mean, some of the stuff that he was producing, like production time, was like 3 days. Wow. And that was just to produce it. That wasn't even to come up with a recipe.
Wow.
So one of the cocktails we'll talk about at the very end, I think he mentioned it took 6 months to get it right. Wow. So this is kind of the level that they're working at. And it's more of kind of like this incubator that draws on many different kind of disciplines and brings them all together for a cocktail experience. So, when we're talking about this stuff, it's like a multi-stage cocktail designed experience that I've never seen before. So the first one that they had 3 examples of how they kind of worked all these things together. The first one was this really intricate Sazerac, and their kind of like wow moment, if you will, was a edible bubble that they created. And it was literally like when you were a kid and you would blow through a straw. That's literally how it's delivered.
Wow.
And it's really cool. Like a lot of this is about your emotion and at where it takes you as a consumer of their products. So instantly you felt very childlike. And he would go around the room and blow these bubbles. And
in the room of the seminar?
In the room. He would just like go around the entire room just blowing bubbles all over the place. And it was funny to watch people react to this because some people were very like calm and collected and put their hand out and smell it and taste it. And there's other people out there like jumping at it like
dogs.
I'm gonna bite this bubble. That was me. But it was really cool, like just being able to kind of let go for a moment and really focus on this one thing and kind of unleash your own imagination is what they were really going for with this cocktail. And it was fantastic. It was a beautiful cocktail. And I think the edible bubble was smoke infused. So it was really interesting. But yeah, that was like one example of that. And I think...
So it's really like taking the experience like outside the glass. It's not just the moment where, what's the taste on my tongue?
Right.
What's the aroma I'm getting? It's like so much bigger than that.
Right, exactly. And it was just a fascinating thing to see people interact with the cocktail versus like dissecting it and, you know, picking out the flavors and the evolution of the flavors and stuff like that, which was another experiment or cocktail that he designed, which we'll get to in a second. But it was all about having fun.
Yeah.
And they framed it up this way the entire time. It was like, it's not about what we do, it's about how you feel when you have these. And they never asked you, how is the cocktail? Their like callbackers, their second visit is, how does this make you feel? And I thought that was really cool, because you're taking away any kind of focus on the drink. It's more about you as the consumer.
Tell me about your relationship with your father.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna need more booze.
Joking aside, though, that is what we saw a couple years ago when we went to the Aviary Bar in Chicago, which again is right along these lines. The techniques weren't the same, but I think the focus was just really focusing more on experience than taste. I mean, the taste is there. I mean, obviously, if the experience is great and you drink it and it's awful, then that kind of ruins the experience. But I think just having all the pieces work really nicely together. And one of the things you were telling me about was sort of a multi-step cocktail.
Yeah, which was super interesting.
Pina colada?
Yeah, like a...
Ish?
Yeah, it's really kind of hard to explain, but basically what they did is they created chocolate, like just regular piece of chocolate, like almost a truffle, that they infused with flavor, because everything infuses differently in fats or liquids or even alcohol. They all kind of have their own properties. So they infused this coconut, but they infused the chocolate with certain flavors, and you would eat it first, finish it and let the oils and the fats and everything kind of coat your tongue, and then you would drink the cocktail. And then, like, you would have the cocktail, you would taste the cocktail, and then as these two sensations and two flavors started to meld together, it would turn into a pina colada in your mouth.
Wow.
So the cocktail was not a pina colada, and the chocolate wasn't a pina colada, but together they were a pina colada.
So you're kind of you're creating the cocktail. Talk about a la minute, right?
Right, like literally, like can I get
a la seconde?
Right. But I think one of the processes in there takes like 2 days to make. Like one material, one part of that is two days long. But it was really cool, and a really cool part about this, and we're talking about multi-disciplines and bringing them all together, is they kind of live in this artist hub in Spain, is how they kind of described it. So their presentation was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was a giant wood cutting board. It was a floating plate, levitating plate.
Like magnetic?
Like, yeah, magnetic. It was just floating. They created the plate from scratch. They put the chocolates on the plate, and then they created a pineapple, a clear pineapple. Oh, and the cocktail itself was clear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or clarified or something like that. So, and it sat in there. So it was like this whole like presentation. You have this thing that's like magically floating in front of you, and then you get the instructions on how to do all this stuff, and it's just like this mind bender of a cocktail.
I'm gonna see if I can get some photos. Either we're gonna reach out to the presenters or dig through Chris's iPhone. I'm not sure if he was sober enough to take pictures.
It was a crowded room. Everyone was taking pictures, so hopefully I got a couple. But it was just
we'll try. I'll put those in the show notes.
Fascinating, and he was working with people in metallurgy, and he was working with carpenters, and they were working with a plate designer. So that's what they kind of do, is they bring in all these experts from all these different fields. They have this idea, and then they execute it.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating.
Well, and on that level, I think the third example that Chris told me about was the one that really was my wow moment. And that was, it sounds so corny, and don't let the name ruin you, but like a virtual reality cocktail. So I'm going to let you describe it, because I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, no, and I didn't get a chance to experience it, but there was 2 volunteers in the room. I wasn't fast enough, but they were able to kind of go through this whole experience, and it was really fascinating to watch and kind of get their feedback on, because across the board, both of them said the same thing. This was the most emotional experience they've ever had with a cocktail. And I was like, what?
So what was it?
So basically it was a cocktail, but a virtual reality headset on top of it.
So you put on the headset and you drink a cocktail. From the outside, that's what it looks like.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So you get the headset, you get
like headphones.
Headphones. So you're fully immersed in this cocktail experience, and you can look around inside of it. And so you take a sip, and then you hit play, and all of a sudden, as you start to experiencing the different flavors that are revolving on your palate, it is choreographed to what you're seeing in the VR and hearing.
Oh, wow.
So
did they describe it? Is it like music? Is it like a landscape?
It's all of it. It's like music and the tempo increases as the flavors start to increase. And what happens is what they mentioned was the flavor, the sound and the experience amplify what you're tasting, and vice versa. So it's like this completely like synergistic kind of experience. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, as they took a sip, you can taste the citrus, and everything was yellow, I think is what they were mentioning, and there was absinthe in it, and it would kind of go through these peaks and valleys, and then at the end, this kind of green dragon like sweeps in, and that was the absinthe. And like one guy, it almost seemed like he was going to cry, because he mentioned that it was like a really hard year, and like just being there and experiencing all that stuff was almost surreal. So this was like, you talk about bleeding edge. This is like you're looking back and you're seeing the bleeding edge because they're creating it. I mean, it's pretty pretty profound.
I mean, I think something like that really speaks to the concept of focusing on the experience and not the taste.
Right.
I mean, I think in some ways, probably what you're seeing probably makes you taste some more of what you may have otherwise missed.
Right. And one of the things that we were talking about this, it was a very open dialogue room, and one of the things that we were all kind of mentioning is like, as a consumer, as somebody that's not immersed in this industry and building cocktails from scratch and evaluating flavors and palates and evolution of drinks on your taste buds, he said as a consumer of that, it forces you to do that.
Oh, I could see that.
So it really makes you experience it the way a drink creator or a chef or somebody else would, and kind of opens your eyes into kind of how we see drinks.
That's true. You can't gloss over it with a sip and then go back to chatting with your friends.
Right.
Like, it's a very immersive experience.
Yeah, and I would say it was probably a 30-second experience.
Wow.
So it's not a small one. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I think the punchline from this presentation, the way you expressed it to me, was first of all, obviously, think about the experience beyond just taste.
Right.
And secondly, and I think this one is really interesting, the idea of reaching outside the hospitality community. I think we talk a lot about reaching out within the hospitality community.
Right.
We talk a lot about mentorship. We talk a lot about reaching out and networking and getting to know the people around you, to learn from the people in your community, but we don't talk a lot about metallurgy.
Yeah, or glass blowing.
or other people.
Carpentry.
Or, audiovisual design.
Right.
Or music and things like this. And I think all of these, I mean, even you're probably not going to be putting together a virtual reality headset in your bar program, but you're probably going to have to choose music.
Right.
And you're probably going to have to choose decorations.
And volume of music and lighting and all these other things that we see every day. But
And you can't not do it. So I think the idea of reaching outside our community to create a more immersive experience that aligns with what your vision is I think it's a really great idea, and something that we can incorporate without having to get quite so crazy.
Yeah, and this could ripple through every aspect of the bar program, from menu design to architecture to bar design to, like you mentioned, lighting and music and even the quality of your napkins and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
This all kind of comes into play. And
you have a concept, and every little piece of that can either support it or take away from it. But I think the next time I have an opportunity to try a virtual reality cocktail, I will be doing that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Looks like I'm buying a virtual reality headset. No, I'm not.
No.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and if you're looking for more information on some of the material that we talked about in this show, definitely head on over to our show notes at mixologytalk.com/132. We'll include some links in some of the areas that we talked about, and you can further investigate on your own.
And I will try to include those photos as well.
Oh yeah, hopefully we can find some.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. If you like this sort of thing, if you like to stay up to date on what is new in the world of cocktails, bartending, mixology, all that good stuff, you might like our newsletter. We have a weekly newsletter that I send out. It goes over all the new articles that we've created, but I also send out my favorite links for the week.
There's some good ones in there.
Sometimes they're nerdy, sometimes they're funny.
Fun, yeah.
Usually nerdy, a lot of nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and sign up for that if you just go to abarabove.com. There's a big old link right at the top of the page there. I think it's get your cheat sheet, something like that, and that'll sign you up for our newsletter. Another option is just follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, and I think there was a couple things that we didn't even touch on in this podcast because just not enough time. but we'll include some of those in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
But if you are enjoying this podcast, do us a favor. Please leave us a review on iTunes or whatever platform you're pulling the podcast from. It would definitely mean a lot to us. Just helps us increase our reach and get exposed to new listeners, and it just makes us feel good.
It's true.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. So if you've already left a review, though, we definitely appreciate that, and thank you very much. So until our next podcast, happy mixing, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Boop.
Moving on.
Spicy.
I'm thinking.